everyone. I hope you are having a good day. I'd like to talk to you today about consistency. Now, consistency is the ability to keep going and to keep repeating the same action. And sometimes that can be very hard, particularly in this time when we are dealing with COVID 19 and so much uncertainty. Um, there could be the possibility of just giving yourself some slack or too much slack and stopping the things that you know that you should actually be doing even in even in this time. So I just want to just encourage you to be consistent regardless of the results you're seeing, like physically. Be consistent. If it's something you're passionate about, if it's something that adds value to the lives of people, be consistent. And in the early days, you might not get much by way of feedback or even support, but the act of being consistent is actually preparing you and strengthening your muscles. So eventually, when the accolades and the support does come, you're not dependent on it because it wasn't there initially. And if you get it later on, it's not something you're dependent on. You're grateful for it by all means, but you're not dependent on it because consistency builds within you resilience. So when you're consistent over a period of time, you stop relying on people, and you just do what you know you're supposed to be doing because it's what is right for you to do, and you offer that up. I read a book a while back by Malcolm Gladwell. I can't quite remember the name right now, but he made reference to the Beatles and how initially they would just play from clubs. They play at clubs, pubs, wherever they could go, they would play. And Malcolm Gladwell, in his book, he talks about doing a thing for about 10,000 times. And when you do that thing for 10,000 times, you actually become an expert without knowing. And that's what happened with the Beatles. They had so much practice. They had so much practice in darkness. And when I say darkness, I mean that they were not recognized. They were not being given any accolades. They just practiced wherever they were asked to perform. They performed as much as possible. They had over 10,000 hours of experience. And then eventually something happened and they blew up in the public eye. But it's easy to think that that publicity came just like that. No, it came through consistent effort. It came through consistent practice in darkness, without recognition, without celebration, without support. They just did what they were passionate about, and eventually their passion yielded results. So I just want to encourage you today. You might be a doctor, a nurse, a frontline worker, a business person, whatever role you have in life. Be consistent at that. Be consistent as well in your relationships. Just because you're not going out or working outdoors anymore doesn't mean you get to be snappy with those that you're living with. Be consistent in being nice. Be consistent with your relationships. Invest in kindness and love in your relationships, because just like your skills, just like the skills that you offer to the public, the relationships that you have in your life, whatever you invest in those relationships, initially you will not necessarily see the fruits of that, but speaking nicely to people, being considerate, being thoughtful, being loving, eventually as you persist with sowing those seeds, you will see results. So be consistent with your relationships with your spouse, with your children, because children, particularly when they're teenagers, they're a completely different species. I know that sometimes when adults grow up, they have all these different issues to deal with and they forget what it was like to be a teenager. But being a teenager is almost like being a mutant. You're mutating into this different person. You're no longer a child, but you're no longer an adult. You don't know who you are. You have all these hormones raging, and it can be hard. So parents, I just wanted to encourage you out there. If you've got a teenager, be patient with them and be consistent in understanding them. Be consistent in listening to them. Be consistent in spending one-on-one time with them, because whatever they might be going through might not just come out in just the one conversation. When they feel like they can trust you with their thoughts, with their feelings, then they're more likely to share eventually, but that can only come with consistency. The same applies with relationships between a husband and their wife. Men usually are not very good at talking or sharing their thoughts and their concerns. They just tend to internalize it, and I speak generally because not all men are like that, but some men are. And so, as a wife, as a partner, just taking the time to just ask them what's going on in your mind, what's troubling you, what are you dealing with, is there anything that you'd like to talk about? Just asking them those kind of questions within a safe environment, on a consistent basis. One day they just might decide to share their thoughts, share their fears, share their concerns with you. So my word to you is to be consistent. Be consistent with your skills. Be consistent in your relationships. Be consistent in your personal development. Jim Rohn says, look after you for me, and I will look after me for you." So many times people tend to put other people first. You put your spouse first, you put your children first. But when you do that, eventually you're going to run on empty because you're pouring into them, but you haven't taken the time to pour into yourself first. So your focal points in life is to focus on you, develop yourself, pour into yourself, so you're actually operating from a full tank, and you can pour into your spouse, you can pour into your relationships, you can pour into your business or your work, whatever that may be. So be consistent, okay? Be consistent with exercise, with health. Just because we have a lockdown or the gyms might be closed doesn't mean you get to slack with your health. You can still go for a walk, you can still go run, and you can still eat healthily. These are all within your power to do. So be consistent. That is my word for you today. Okay? Until next time, from my heart to yours, do stay safe. Until next time, take it easy. Bye.